To be Bobby Campoy over here. Um, and while Bill's setting up, just wanted to offer an observation. Um, the observation is there's not a symphony that is more magnificent than the multitude of activities that occur on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier during flight operations. It's just something marvelous to behold. And Bobby here, as one of the members, a sailor who worked on the flight deck on 2 carriers, I believe, engaged in those activities, daytime, nighttime, all kinds of weather, all kinds of sea conditions. And basically, anybody working on the flight deck knows that without the contribution of hundreds of sailors to any particular cycle, Maverick would never have left the ship. So we're going to have Bobby going to give you an overview of his experience as 2 aspects of naval aviation flight deck operations. One as a member of the flight deck crew, and then secondly as a plane captain in a squadron with F-8 Crusader fighter aircraft. So Bobby?
Thank. Can everybody hear me? Louder? There you go. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, thank you all for having me here this morning. Just to let you know, I joined the Navy in 1966, right after I graduated from high school. And because I was such a great student in high school, I graduated in the top 95% of my class. I knew that after I graduated, I was going to be drafted. And I already had a friend in the Marine Corps that was in Vietnam, and I had a good friend in the Army that was in Vietnam. And after hearing about their short experiences in the jungle, I thought, that's not for me. So looking at my options, I looked at the Air Force, and they wanted you to do 4 years, and I really wasn't interested in doing that. So I went to see the Navy recruiter. And the Navy recruiter said, we've got a great deal going on. We've got this thing called the Kiddie Cruise. And they said if you joined before you were 18, you could get out 1 day before you were 21. So on my little nimble fingers, I figured out, well, that was just a little over 3 years. So I thought I'd do that. And I told the Navy recruiter that I wanted to go into naval aviation. I wanted to be around jets. And I thought, you know, working around jets, being on a nice base, it would be a pretty nice job. So I graduated from boot camp and I got my first duty assignment. And my first duty assignment was to be part of ship's company on the USS Enterprise. And there you can see the Enterprise. And for the next 10 months, that was where I worked. I got on the ship, and we were home based in Alameda. I got on the ship. Everybody reported to the hangar bay, and we were each asked to count off by the number 4. And based on your number was what division in the air division you're going to be assigned to. So I was a number 1, so I was assigned to the V1 division. So I just wanted to give you some sense about how big that aircraft carrier, that Bill, that we'll just stay on this. No, go back one. Yeah, just some sense about how big the Enterprise was. The Enterprise was the first nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. It went to sea in 1963. It had a crew of 4,800. It had an air wing of about 90 airplanes. The flight deck was 1,123 feet long, and it was 252 feet wide. It encompassed about 4.5 acres, or about 3.5 football fields. The ship weighed 93,284 tons, without any airplanes, without any people, without any other equipment. That equates to about 186 million pounds. The anchor, we had 2 anchors. The anchors weighed 32 tons apiece, and the anchor chain links weighed 300 pounds apiece. What was really amazing about this ship, though, was its top speed. The top speed for the Enterprise was almost 40 miles an hour, about 33 knots. Let's go to the next slide. This really sums up what it's like to be on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier. It says, once you've worked here, everything else seems boring. Next slide. As Jim indicated on the Enterprise, there were a number of people, about 90 to 100 people working on the flight deck at any one time. And in order for us to know what every person did, every person's job was indicated by a shirt color. As you can see, excuse me for turning my back to you. As you can see, the green shirts were in maintenance for the catapults and the arresting gear. The white shirts were for quality control and medical teams. The red shirts were the ordnance guys, which were really important in case an airplane left ordnance on the deck. You'd run as far as you could away from it. They would run toward it and fix it. They were also part of the crash crew. The yellow shirts were the flight deck directors. They were the people that directed the airplane's movement around the deck. The air boss who sat in the control tower and managed everything that went on the flight deck was also had on a yellow shirt, and the catapult officers had on yellow shirts. The brown shirts were the plane captains. They were responsible for taking care of an individual airplane, and we call them turd shirts. The purple shirts were the fuel people, and we call them grapes. The other shirt colors didn't have a derogatory or another name for them. Blue shirts were plane handlers, and they basically unchained and unchocked the airplanes before they took off. They helped move airplanes if you had to push an airplane in one direction or another without using its engines. That's what the blue shirts did. During my 3 years in the Navy, I was able to wear a blue shirt, a brown shirt, a green shirt, and a white shirt. And I'll talk to you a little bit about those as I go on with my talk. Naval aviation guys, enlisted guys, we were called Airedales, and it was, for me in boot camp, I really wanted to be an Airedale. Bill, can you go to the next slide? This is a pad eye on the flight deck, and they're all over the flight deck. And this says, if you've ever had to grab onto one of these and hold on for dear life, you must be an Airedale. We used to hook up chains that kept the airplanes from rolling around while we're at sea. But these were also important in case you got blown over by jet blast, which happened because sometimes the pilots, as they were turning the airplanes, would throttle up the airplanes, push their jet engines, and if you happened to be in the way of them, you'd get knocked over and you'd roll down the deck until you grabbed a pad eye. So these were, they were all over the flight deck. The other thing about these, though, is you'd get little pieces of junk in these, and you had to make sure before flight operations started that you cleared all the stuff off the deck. Bill, next one. I worked in, as I indicated, in the V1 division, and basically our job was to get up on the flight deck about 90 minutes before flight operations started. We would put all the airplanes in the positions where they were going to be set prior to launch, and there were about 45 airplanes that would be launched, and it was choreographed about when they would take off and which one went which way. Our job was to set up the flight deck for the launch. During the launch, our job was to take the chains off of the main gear and the front and the nose gear of the airplanes, take the chocks out of the wheels so that the airplanes could move down the deck. The flight deck was divided into 3 sections. Fly 1, which was up on the bow, Fly 2, which was midships, and Fly 3, which was back on the fantail. There were 2 catapults on Fly 1 on the bow. There were 2 catapults midships, Fly 2, and then the 4 resting gear were back in the fantail. So we would get up, we would do all this, and our normal work shifts were about 12 hours a day. And we worked days, we worked nights, we worked in rain, we worked with the ship going up at 15 degrees and going down at 15 degrees and listing from side to side. about anywhere from 15 to 20 degrees. It was fun for the pilots because they're in this nice airplane with a canopy on it in the stormy weather. Of course, they had to take off and land on the aircraft carrier deck, but we'd be all sopping wet. And, if it was nice and cold in Vietnam in the summer, it was in the Tonkin Gulf, it was warm, so you were hot. As part of our uniform, when we worked on the flight deck, we had little cotton hats, earmuffs, goggles, a long sleeve cotton shirt, our naval boondock shoes, no steel toes. Today, the guys on the flight deck have what they call cranials. They have a metal hat that comes over their head so they don't hurt their head on airplane wings or other parts of the airplane. They have what they call a float coat, which is if they get blown over the side, they pull a string and it inflates so they can float. We didn't have anything like that. And they had steel-toed boots. So they have a lot more safety gear than we did back then. So that's basically what I did. You can see in one of the pictures a guy holding on to a tilly bar. That tilly bar was put into the front axle of an A4, and you would actually steer the airplane down the deck and park it. Okay, next one. This is a picture of the Enterprise going into Pearl Harbor. That was in November of 1966. As you can see on the left side is the Arizona Memorial. We have sailors lining the flight deck, and as we went by the Arizona Memorial, those of us that were on that side of the ship saluted. We also said the Arizona was arriving to acknowledge that we were going by the Arizona, and it was deeply sentimental to go in there and go past that memorial, knowing that a lot of brave sailors had died. Next. This is a picture of the Enterprise flying in operations off of Yankee Station, which was off the coast of Vietnam. When the Enterprise departed the line in June of 1967, our pilots had flown more than 13,400 battle missions during 132 combat days of operations. The Admiral Highland at the time expressed to the crew of the Enterprise about a job well done. The Enterprise had sailed 67,630 miles during operations with the 7th Fleet. During that time, the pilots and the aircraft on the Enterprise had dropped over 10,000 tons of ordnance on Vietnam. And as you can see, and Phil, you'll like this picture, this was the first Westpac that A6s flew off the Enterprise. So, and Phil knows he took off and landed on a number of different aircraft carriers. We would spend anywhere between 30 and 35 days at sea, and then we would go into port. Well, on one time out there, we were getting ready to go to eat, and all of a sudden we had lobster and steak. And we knew right away that we were going to be extended on the line. So we spent an additional 20 days on the line. So we were at sea for 50 days. And after you come back from sea, we go into the port of the Philippines. And of course, we would go into Olongapo City. And the first thing we would do, next slide, Bill. Oh, I'm sorry, just back. This is the Yankee Station. And this was where we served and spent most of our time off the coast of Vietnam. You can see we're very, very close to Da Nang. Next slide. So this is a picture of me on the flight deck of the Enterprise, actually steering an A4 down the deck. I got in trouble for taking these pictures because I did not have my goggles on. And one of the flight deck directors saw me and I got in trouble for not having that on. But as you can see, I actually had the ability to steer this airplane down the deck. And one of the things on the edge of the flight deck, there was a little guardrail so that if the airplane got too close to it, hopefully the wheel wouldn't go over it and go into the catwalk. But as we were taking these airplanes down the deck, we would try to get the outboard wheel on that airplane as close to that little rail as we could. And when we would do that, when the pilot would look off to the side where the ocean was at, the only thing they could see, they could not see the deck. The only thing they could see was the ocean. And here's a pilot in a $1 million airplane being guided down the deck by an 18-year-old going, "Oh, we're going to take you and park you." So that was a lot of fun. And you can see a plane captain actually going underneath the airplane. And he's got chains with him. So as soon as that airplane was parked, he would give the other blue shirts the chains, and then they would chain down the airplane. What was really great about this job is I didn't have to be under the airplanes taking the chains off of the wheels, because you had to bend down and be in all kinds of contorted positions. Next one. We had dignitaries that came on the ship. As you can see in the left-hand picture is General Westmoreland, who was the head of the U.S. forces in Vietnam. To the left of him was Jim Holloway, and Captain Holloway was the captain of the Enterprise. After I married Sally, we went to visit her uncle in Escondido, and or Oceanside, excuse me. And when I met her Uncle Bill, I found out that he was in the same graduating class at Annapolis with Captain Holloway. I also found out that he was in the same graduating class as Alan Shepard, one of the first people to fly into space and one of the people to walk on the moon. And when I met her Uncle Bill, he asked me what it was like to serve with Jim. And I said, "Excuse me, I'm an E3. Captain Holloway is a full bird captain. And there was only twice that I met him. Luckily, I wasn't in any trouble when I did. But I said it was nice for Uncle Bill to think that I had a personal relationship with the captain of the Enterprise." On the right is the Prime Minister of Vietnam, Nguyen Cao Ky, and he was awarding our executive officer an award. Down on the bottom is Vietnam Lieutenant General Nguyen Van Tu, and he was inspecting the Marine detachment. On the Enterprise, we had 100 Marines. And it was interesting. The Marines did really two things. They guarded the nuclear reactors. They took care of the weapons in the magazine, and they were the guards for the admiral. Well, our admiral used to like to run around the flight deck, and he would come up and run around, and he would have a Marine in front of him and a Marine behind him. And they would follow him everywhere he went. Well, the admiral used to love to lose the Marines. And he would go somewhere, and all of a sudden you'd see these two poor Marines looking for the admiral. And they'd be up in the flight deck looking for the admiral. The admiral would go this way. The Marines would go, "Where's the admiral?" We'd go, "He went that way." But the other thing was the Marines took care of the brig. So if you went to jail on the ship, they were your guards. Yes. Okay, next picture. So, there it is. That's what we did when we were, after 50 days at sea, we came back to the Philippines and drank San Miguel. And if any of you guys were in the Philippines, we used to call it Samagoo. So drink a lot of that. Next picture. That's a picture of the Enterprise coming back into San Diego, into San Francisco under the Golden Gate Bridge. That was in July of 1967. At the time we came back, we had two actors on board. We had Henry Fonda and Van Johnson, and they were making a movie on the ship. As we were going under the Golden Gate Bridge, Lucille Ball was coming across the bridge, filming part of the movie, and the movie was called Yours, Mine, and Ours. And I don't know if any of you ever seen it, but if you do, look for me, because there's a real quick picture of me on the flight deck of the But as we came back, that bridge would be full of people, and then there'd be all kinds of boats and stuff in the harbor walking us back. So, yes.
I belonged to a breakfast club in San Francisco for 10 years when I was on active duty as a postal inspector. When the Navy ships would come under, especially the aircraft carriers coming back to Alameda, we would be on the Golden Gate Bridge and we would dump flowers over the edge onto the flight and It was really exciting for us. Plus, I took a cruise on the eighth. I took a cruise on a ship out of San Francisco with the captain who was a member of that.
Your mouth. It's gotta hold it up to your mouth.
I don't want to ruin your presentation.
That's okay.
Okay, so I was, the Breakfast Club had the captain of the ship, and he had us come on board several times to, when the family was on board. Pretty exciting. I imagine as a young man, you were very, very.
It was the first time we went out. I thought the conning tower thing was going to hit the underneath of the bridge, and it wasn't that far from it going out. So, but it was always very exciting to come underneath the Golden Gate Bridge to do that. Okay, so and it took us 11 days to come back from Subic Bay to the to San Francisco, and everything that didn't move got painted gray. So it was so that the ship could look good when we came back into the harbor. Next picture. After I left the Enterprise, I went to tech school and became an aircraft mechanic, ADJ. I was in tech school for 3 months, and I got reassigned to VF-124, which was a replacement air group for Crusaders in 1967. And this is the airplane that I worked on, and it's an F-8 Crusader. It's a single-seat fighter, the last of the single-seat fighters in the fleet at the time. Its main armament was 4 20-millimeter cannons. You can see 2 on the right side, and there were 2 on the left side. Airplane was very interesting because it had a wing that was movable. When the airplane landed, the wing would come up to give it more lift. When the airplane took off, the wing would come up to give it more lift as it was taking off. It was interesting because the nose gear steering on this airplane did not work unless that wing was up. We had a pilot at Miramar, where I was stationed, that came to the end of the runway, brand new pilot, first time in the airplane. He got down to the end of the runway, called us up and said, "My nose gear steering doesn't work." We drive down to the end of the runway. I looked at the airplane, pulled the steps down, got up, talked to the pilot. I said, "Sir, put your wing up." Put his wing up, and his nose gear steering took off. So, it was kind of a good thing for me to be able to tell a young lieutenant, how to work his airplane. Pardon? As Jim indicated, during my time in the Navy, I got a chance to go on 7 different aircraft carriers. I was stationed aboard the Enterprise. I got a chance to go aboard the United States John F. Kennedy, which was the newest carrier in the fleet. And then I had a chance to serve on a couple of older carriers, the USS Oriskany and the Hancock. And to go from a fairly modern aircraft carrier like the Enterprise or the Kennedy back to some of the older carriers, they were very, very different. And it was very interesting for us to be able to do that. Next picture. There's a picture of me on one of our Crusaders. I was a plane captain at the time. And our job was to make sure that when an airplane got ready to fly, you helped the pilot get in the airplane, and then you'd pull a safety pin out of his ejection seat to make sure that when he flew, or if he need to, his injection seat was ready to be used. We also had other clips in if he had ordnance, and we would make sure before the pilot took off that the plane was flyable and ready to go. And basically that airplane was assigned to us. So we were really lucky. They would print our name, plane captain, and then they'd print our name on the side of the airplane. So that was nice and special for us. And again, during the time I was in VF-124, I was a plane captain who wore a brown shirt when we went aboard a ship. I wore a green shirt when I went aboard the ship as a mechanic. And then lastly, I went as a white shirt or a final inspector. And to me, that was the best job I had, because my job before the airplane, when the airplane was on the catapult and getting ready to fly, the catapult officer would look at me and asked me whether I had a thumbs up or a thumbs down in order to tell him that that airplane was safe to fly. And here I was, a little 19-year-old kid, an E4, helping put a $2 million airplane up into flight. So I felt really, really good about it. And when the airplane left and came back, you felt really good that the pilot had a good flight. Next picture. This is an FA Crusader. I don't know if any of you have been on the USS Midway in San Diego. This is on the flight deck of the Midway. It's a great place to go see an aircraft carrier. This is one of the Crusaders, the type that I worked on. That intake is 22 feet long from the edge of that intake until the engine. And you can see that the wing is up in the airplane. That was a real scary intake to be around, because when that airplane would power up, if you were anywhere close to that, you had to be very careful because you could get sucked into it. Next one. That's the engine on that airplane. And that nose cone is 22 feet from the entrance of that airplane. And if you had to work on that nose cone, you had to crawl down that 22 feet of intake. You had to take that cap off of that generator. You had to take off 12 bolts. You had to cut the safety wire, take off 12 bolts, take off a 60-pound generator, lay it, and we would be laying down. You'd pull it over your head, lay it on your chest, roll it over, and then drag out that generator to be replaced. That was the easy part. The tough part was getting that generator back down that 22 feet of intake, setting it up on the engine, bolting it down, and safety wiring those bolts, because you had to safety wire them to make sure that if they came undone, they wouldn't fall off and go into the engine. And you had to do that either squatting down or laying on your back. And I was lucky. I was only about 145 pounds then. So it was fairly easy for me to get in and out of that. But whenever you found out that the F8 needed a new generator, you were really leery about having to go down and do that. But again, that's the same engine that is on the B-52. That engine put out about 10,000 pounds of thrust, and in full afterburner, it would put out about 18,000 pounds of thrust. Time? Pretty good? Okay. Just one last thing. Can I go back one? That airplane had a very unusual afterburner. Most of the afterburners in the airplanes at that time had metered afterburners. So the pilot would go into afterburner mode, and the afterburner would come on very gently until it was at full power. With the Crusader, it went into afterburner with a dump of fuel. It had about 225 cc's of fuel just dumped automatically into the afterburner portion, and there was this loud pop, and it was a fairly loud bang. And with our student pilots, as they were learning to fly, when you land on a carrier, the minute your wheels touch the ground, the pilot goes into full power just in case they don't grab a wire and they have to fly again. Well, when the Crusader would land on the deck, the student pilot sometime with the jerk would put the airplane into afterburner, and that loud pop would go off. And some of the guys who had not been around the Crusader, you hear this loud bang, you'd see them jump. So it was very interesting. One last thing. One of the interesting parts about being on the aircraft carrier is when airplanes landed, they sometimes lost part of the airplane. We had an airplane that landed once and had a missile drop, went right down the deck. And it's kind of a parting of the Red Sea, and you just have to get out of the way with it. We had an A6 that landed once that lost a main wheel, and the tire on A6 is about yay big. And this tire came off the A6, headed right down the bow, right through fly one. And it was really interesting to watch us all, not in a hurry, just got out of the way, let it go past us and go to the ocean. All right, I'm done. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Was that a Photoshop of you in the plane where you had those long legs, like 6 foot tall?
No.
And then how fast was the Crusader?
Well, in full afterburner, it would go probably 1,100. How many medals?
You know how to answer this, your wife's here.
I got the Vietnam Service Medal, the Vietnam Medal of,
No, I don't, that's still on the phone.
oh,
Remember, Bobby, what happens in a log post stays in a log post.
oh, yeah, no, yeah.
Do you happen to know when the original Enterprise was decommissioned and then your atomic Enterprise came into being, when that was?
Well, if you're talking about CV6 during World War II, I don't know when she was decommissioned.
Okay.
I know the Enterprise I was on is now being scrapped. And there's a new keel and part of the new Enterprise has been laid. So,
Cool, thanks. Yeah, I asked that, that's, my father was on the Enterprise.
oh,
Yeah,
CV6.
and I didn't know much
Yeah.
about all that stuff. All right, thanks.
You know what year the Enterprise was built?
Which one?
What year it was made?
The one I was on was, the keel was laid in 1962.
1952,
62.
62?
Yes.
Because my grandson was on it, and I don't remember what year he was on it, but I know he was on it. I can't figure out which one, when he was on it, that's all. I didn't know when it was built, so that's what I was wanting to find out, because, I haven't seen him for, I don't know, how many years, 20 years, it was 30 years, I don't even know what, so I'll find out what time it was when it was built.
Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
I was assigned a work party to tie up the Enterprise. I think it was the dock kind of opposite to Arizona. We were about to leave and they said, hold on, the Enterprise has run aground.
Oh,
So they called us about 4 hours later and we tied up the Enterprise. And then when the Enterprise, that was in Hawaii, and when the Enterprise left, they ran aground again. Were you on the Enterprise then?
no.
Okay, they had a new captain. They had a new captain after that.
Yes, they did. Just one little short story. The young man who got the scholarship, I was privileged to be on the Enterprise at the same time he was on the supply ship, replenishing us in the Tonkin Gulf. So I didn't get a chance to tell him that when he was here, but yeah, let him know that I was real happy to serve with his grandpa. Any other questions? Go Navy, thank you.
Thank you, Bobby.